What is the most random NSFW history fact that you didn't learn in school?
I read that Victor Hugo slept with so many prostitutes that all the brothels in Paris were closed on the day of his death because they all took the day off to mourn his death.
La Palatine, Louis XIV's second sister-in-law, who had quite a temper, replied harshly to the king, slapped her son, a prince in public, loved to take shits in the outdoor. She wrote countless letters saying she hated Versailles because she had to shit around valets and thus could not enjoy her shit dropping. There are little penises carved, engraved on the pavement in Pompeii, that point towards brothels. Those lil dicks survived volcanic eruption, as did some NSFW paintings inside the buildings. That the ancient Egyptians believed that the god Atum, after creating himself from water, created two other gods, Shu and Tefnut, to build the world either by masturbating and spitting his own semen from his mouth or having sexual intercourse with his shadow depending on the myth.
Fath Ali Shah Qajar, second king in Qajar dynasty in Iran, about 200 years ago, had 160 wives. Nasiruddin Shah Qajar had about 50. In Islam you're not allowed to marry more than 4 wives at the same time. It is said that Nasiruddin Shah was once walking in his palace and saw a beautiful girl, and asked if he could marry her. Everyone was looking at him weirdly and he asked why. One of his servants said that she was his daughter. King Edward VII really loved prostitutes but found himself hindered by his weight, so he had a special chair commissioned to keep at his favorite French brothel. His chair allowed him to have threesomes with the prostitutes while also being able to support his weight since he didn't want to crush his partners.
The group of people who lived in ancient Peru who would go to great pains to only depict sodomy on their pottery. They were super anal about only depicting certain sex acts, if you catch my drift. https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/mochi_culture https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/mochi_culture.
There was a Victorian sexual purity activist who was staunchly anti-masturbation, unsurprisingly. Descriptions of masturbation in general society at the time were so broad and so couched in euphemism that one day she found out that she'd actually been masturbating for years without knowing that that's what she'd been doing. Charles II, Charles the Impotent, was the convergence point for several generations of royal inbreeding and was born with significant disabilities. His parents were desperate for him to produce an heir. They implemented a system of ropes and pulleys to lower virgins onto him in hopes he could impregnate one. It didn't work and the dynasty collapsed.
12-year-old Pocahontas used to entertain white colonists with nude cartwheels. This is actually one of the few things we know about her that's indisputable. Lyndon Johnson had a huge cock, which he nicknamed Jumbo. He was famous for pulling it out to assert dominance, or talking to people randomly at the urinals with it out. Personally, I was thrilled they brought up this detail in The Crown. That Genghis Khan fucked enough of Asia to ensure his bloodline would continue for generations regardless of what peoples lived or died.
The Palace of Versailles in France was huge and had numerous people coming in and out. Because of a number of reasons, if people really needed to they would defecate or piss in any corner of the palace and just leave it there. It was also nearby a river of sewage, so just coming near the palace reeked. It's not how you would like to imagine Marie Antoinette living. Rasputin convinced tons of women to sleep with him using religion, claiming that forgiveness was the highest grace and that unless you sinned, you could not be forgiven. The Egyptians did not wear helmets to build the Great Pyramids.
Poet Shel Silverstein used to work for Playboy magazine and was good friends with Hefner. He spent a great deal of his time at the Playboy mansion. Turns out Anne Frank talks a lot about masturbation in her diary. Don't know if this is fact or fiction, but Napoleon allegedly had a huge sweat fetish. Whenever he'd be at war or wherever far away from home, he would write letters to his wife telling her not to bathe until he'd come home. King Louis XVI had a chamber pot with a picture of Ben Franklin in the bottom given to a lady who Franklin had bedded. The person who killed Simon de Montfort sent his detached Balzac to his wife, who then wore them on her hat as it turned out.
1. Zeus fucked everyone and everything too. Famed Irish writer James Joyce was raunchy AF. https://www.mentalfloss.com/article/74934/james-joyces-incredibly-dirty-letters. My grandfather was hospitalized for almost 3 months during World War I because he fucked his way through France and contracted super gonorrhea. Ben Franklin loved to fuck. It's rumored he even boned the Queen of France. Ancient Egyptians used to use crocodile dung as a contraceptive by shoving dried dung up their hoo-ha to form an impenetrable barrier.
One of Joan of Arc's best bros was possibly a serial killer. And not just a serial killer, a killer of children. Although he was eventually retried and, officially, found not guilty. Gilles de Rais https://en.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/Giles_de_Rais.
While gay sex was illegal in the UK in the 19th century, lesbian sex wasn't, because the patriarchal government refused to believe it was a thing. There were human zoos up to 1958, last one in Belgium. Human zoos were very common on Europe and North America, usually displaying indigenous people from Africa and South Asia. It was quite popular and wasn't seen as weird. They even displayed pygmy people as the missing link.
Tentacle hentai was created to circumvent Japan's censorship laws that prohibited showing a penis enter a vagina. The image of a witch flying with a broomstick comes from women that rubbed hallucination drugs in their vaginas, using a broomstick.
Ben Franklin fancied French prostitutes. The first thing Anton van Leeuwenhoek, the father of microbiology, looked at on a slide, under a microscope, was his own semen. Rape of Nanking. Japan really doesn't get enough shit for all the war crimes they committed during the war. The whole history of colonization of Congo by Belgium is NSFL. They used to chop off hands of the slaves if they didn't fill out their daily quota. Men, women, children, no exception. Disturbing article, father stares at the hand and foot of his 5-year-old, severed as a punishment for failing to make the daily rubber quota, Belgian Congo, 1904 https://rarehistorical-photos.com/father-hand-Belgian-Congo-1904/. Hitler really liked cocaine. His doctor even gave him eye drops made from it.
There was an island in Michigan near Traverse Bay that was taken over by Mormons and turned into a kingdom in the 1800s. A militia was formed by the mainlanders where they killed the king and raped the women.
LBJ had a large penis. He liked to show it off. He named it Jumbo. At my Catholic school, each grade that passed was attached to a certain saint that we would pray to and learn about. Our saint was St. Catherine of Siena. In the 5 years I learnt about this woman, they failed to mention that this chick had visions of wearing baby Jesus' circumcised foreskin as a wedding ring. Apparently that's shit I had to figure out on my own. Saints are fucking weird, man.
Back around the Civil War era, to immunize themselves from smallpox, people would purposely give themselves cowpox by cutting open an infected person's pustules, then taking the pus and rubbing it in a wound. The problem was people couldn't tell the difference between cowpox and syphilis, so a lot of people gave themselves syphilis.
A major problem that Henry V's army faced leading up to the Battle of Agincourt was disease, or more specifically, dysentery. King Edward VII was so big that he had a special chair built so that he could have sex with his mistresses. The chair even has its own Wikipedia entry, https://en.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/love_chair.
Emperor Tiberius of Rome liked having his toes sucked by little kids he called his minnows.
Leonardo da Vinci often drew cartoons of oral sex in his notes, complete with the names of his male students labeling the penises and/or mouths. In essence, he was drawing cartoons of his desire to sexually exploit his students and other young men in his social circles. Mozart loved shit.
Ben Franklin screwed everything that walked or crawled. Margaret Howe loved jacking off a dolphin on LSD for NASA.
That people in the Victorian times were horny bastards and, I'm not totally sure, but I'm going to say royals for now, but may have just been any important person's marriage. Basically, on the night of the wedding, they would go to bed and consummate the marriage. However, there would be an audience to witness it. I was also told, and in some cases, the marriage would be annulled if the woman didn't give off at least a little bit of blood, because she was supposed to be a virgin.